Hi, everyone. Uh, Welcome to week 5. Congrats on being over halfway through. We're, I guess, in the funnel of quickly getting to the end here. And I guess I wanted to take a moment and first congratulate you for getting this far. I think people are doing a great job, not only on the slides but also on the pitches and working on refining those. Um, I guess I wanted to give a few points of advice on some ways to improve kind of some slides and some recurring things that I'm seeing. So I was going to give a little bit of advice there. Um, but before I do that, just to kind of go through our schedule here. So we are in week 5 here. We're going to be doing our prototype slide this week. I'm actually going to be doing a lecture that covers some financial material. So we'll talk about our prototype slide as well and get that in there. But we will be talking about some things that maybe will help you with your business model down in the final week. Yeah, so this week we've got a prototype slide, then we've got a value prop, a team slide, and then finally our market dynamics and pricing slide. So that's what we're going to be finishing up with. Week 8, basically, you're going to turn in your entire presentation and do your full pitch from week 1 through week 8, and we will go from there. So I want to talk briefly just about I guess a common issue or maybe something that can be improved kind of on quite a few people's slides. And this may be related to some of the information that I've got on my slides as well. I think if we look through this slide deck, one of the things you'll notice is that I have a lot of bullet points. Now, there's not bullet points here, obviously, but as we look down, a lot of these slides are all bulleted. Value prop, this is a sentence. This team slide, this is bullet. So there's lots of bullet points. And, even when this is a sentence, you can see that there's pretty limited words here. It's pretty short and concise. I think one of the things you want to be really careful of is putting too many words on any one slide. If you really start to cram in a lot of language, it gets really overwhelming to read these things. And it gets really not only for your, for a third party, but even yourself. It becomes tough just to, wade through everything. So I'd really, advise you to, one, really cut down on the amount of language you're putting on a slide, and two, like that when you can summarize things in bullets, and especially like bullets kind of, like this where we're putting an idea and maybe a follow-up statement or something like that, like can really communicate ideas really quickly and effectively. And that way, if somebody just wants to read the 3-word bullet, they can. If they want to read the full one, they can. Giving some optionality and really shortening can really help. And especially when we're delivering a pitch and, we're kind of glancing at our slide, you don't want to be caught reading your slide. The slide is there to help guide you. It's there to give you oh yeah, I need to talk about having a nature focused approach. And then you just go and, whatever you say, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't in that moment. But like, if you're reading the slide, it's just definitely not going to work. So while if we don't have it all there, it may work or it may not. That's a better outcome than it definitely not working. So, really try to limit that language. And okay, so hopefully that's kind of clear, and really try to keep things concise. I know that it can feel like, oh, I want to get my entire idea out on paper. I'm telling you that's basically impossible. Your entire idea is, you know, uh it's as long as the Bible. If you really were putting everything out there. So, you can't expect people to read that, and so you're just going to need to hit the high points and let people's imaginations kind of fill in the rest. So I know there's a lot of controversy, let's call it, around the use of AI tools. I'm an AI tool advocate, and I would really encourage you to, if you are interested in the world of entrepreneurship, you need to embrace these tools. Now you don't embrace it as a fact creator. You don't embrace it as a journalist or a purveyor of fact. You embrace it as a tool that helps you accomplish things, and you're still the owner of that tool. You're still the responsible party, but using this thing as a tool can really save time, can really help, and I really, really would encourage you to use these on these slides, on these presentations, on the stuff you're turning in. I want you to use these tools in my class. I think they're really important. So I guess I just wanted to give an example on showing you maybe like how I would use it, how we can, just a quick example, and show how we can take a block of text and distill it down in a couple different ways. So you can see here, let me see if I can zoom in here a little bit. All right, so I'm just on ChatGPT, the free version. This is not paid. There's other services, but I'm just going to use this because I think probably most people that are using these things are using this. So you can see here that I've got some text. I've just got a paragraph of text that's like my customer persona text. And I could throw this on a slide and, it'd be real, it would be very complete. But I don't want to do that. I want to try to break it down. So there's a couple of different ways we could do that. So I'm just going to say, summarize this in 4 short bullet points. All right, and I'm going to let tool do its work. We'll see what comes back. Again, this is a live demo, so we all know how live demos go. Okay, so what it came back with is 4, I would call them lengthy bullets. And what I want to do is I want to shorten those further. So I want to say shorten the bullet points to, let's say 7 or less words. So I'm going 7 or less words. Okay. So now this isn't perfect. We could work on further refining it, but like this is actually something that fits on a slide, is readable, is legible, conveys idea. Yes, there are things that clearly, when I condensed it down, were missed, but this is a lot more, there's a lot more legible. Okay. So then I could say, let's say I wanted, instead of them doing that, let's say I wanted to do a sentence, just, even though I think bullets are better, let's say we want to do a sentence, we could do something like, if I come back to actually this first prompt, I could say summarize this in a short sentence. So let's try it as a short sentence instead, and say make this 30% the length. Something like that. Okay, I'm going to keep going shorter. Shorter. All right, we're not going to get there, so I'm not really like what's going on. So I'm going to change my initial and summarize this in a shortened sentence of less than 20 words. Let's just see what that looks like. Okay, so maybe there's something there, I could change this to 15, but you can see like I'm consolidating down, I'm using the tool's reading what I put in and it's spitting out something that's close. And I can, I can do this, I can have it do it again and again and again. I can change this to, 15 words or whatever. I can add additional details. I can mold and modify that sentence. As you can see, I'm just kind of working it, right? And I'm using the tool to work it, and I'm working with the tool to get my output. And from there, I'd copy and paste and put that in my slide. Okay, that's how I use these tools. That's how I suggest you use these tools. You know, use it to help you craft language. I know for me, crafting language is very, very difficult. And this makes it so much easier, so much lighter weight. It's almost like a game. So that's my advice to really help you mold and modify those slides. And yeah, so hopefully that is helpful. All right, so let's jump into our lecture here. We're going to be talking about our, like I said, our financial week. And again, this is going to be lightly related to our prototype slide for the week, but these are key kind of financial things that we want to cover and think about when we're starting our business. So the first thing we want to talk about is our business or our revenue model. And, you know, we need to really think about making money. As we talked about last week, we need to think about profitably making money, i.e., you know, where our customer acquisition cost is greater than is less than the lifetime value. So we want to think about profitability at all times. But you know, the first thing we want to craft is a business model for how our business operates. So a business model explains how a business generates profits and cash flows. And the key there is really thinking about cash flows. So, you know, the old adage is you need to spend money to make money. Well, you need to make money to spend money too. So this is a cash flow. Cash flows through our business. You know, you always are going to be spending money. You're always going to be making money, and you know, money is kind of circular. It moves around like this. Okay, so the business model is going to outline our operations, so our cost centers and our revenue streams. So what's coming in and what's going out from our business, and it identifies, you know, key required resources. What are we spending our money on? Where do we need to put those dollars into the world to do what, you know, we need to do? Now, a truly solid, well-aligned business model is going to align with what our overall, you know, business objective is. So, you know, think of something like Tom's Shoes. You know, they have this green initiative, or maybe not green initiative. They have an initiative to provide, you know, less fortunate people with shoes, and therefore have a business model where they're making enough profit to allow them to give away a pair of shoes. And, you know, their entire business model, their cost center, how much it costs to create a shoe, how much they're able to charge, who they're going after, who's willing to spend that money, is well aligned with, you know, their ability to do that, which helps them achieve long-term success. So if we have an aligned business model, it can really help us on the rest of our business, because then we can advertise authentically. We don't have to, like, you know, hide what we're doing. Okay, so being open, transparent, upfront is important when we're kind of developing these things. So we've got a couple of, again, this is kind of on the last slide, but maybe just expand it out a little bit. Got a couple just important kind of areas of our business plan. We've got our revenue streams, so that's cash coming in. And we've got, you know, so whether that's us selling products or subscriptions or taking advertising in or whatever, we've got revenue streams. So revenue's coming in. We've got costs. So what are we spending that money on? We've got fixed costs, you know, maybe paying employees, or if we have a building or something like that. And then we've got our variable costs, and, you know, those variable costs are really the items that are associated with the production of our good and service. So as we sell more, you know, so if we're a book manufacturer, as we sell more books, we need to buy more paper. That's a variable cost, meaning it basically scales with volume versus not scaling with volume. Now you might say like, well, as I sell more, I need more employees. Yeah, it's still a fixed cost. When you add a new employee, it isn't totally related to your production volume. Um, Maybe you have a business model where it is, but generally. And then we want to identify, risks. We want to identify, um, how is our business kind of contingent on outside factors? I had a professor once that wrote a book called "When It Rains in Brazil" by Starbucks stock he was referring to, and basically, that statement is just referring to, well, when it rains in Brazil, that means the coffee production is gonna go up. That means Starbucks costs are gonna go down, and therefore, you should buy Starbucks coffee because they're gonna make more money. So, there's he would argue that Starbucks stock prices, a risk factor of Starbucks coffee is the weather in Brazil. I know that's just an example. It's maybe far-fetched, maybe something a little too macro to think of, but we want to think about what are the risk factors that impact our business, and are there risk factors that we're able to control? Are there risk factors that we're unable to control? And how those can come into our business model is, we may model that variable risk. We may model, a standard situation, a risky situation, and a low risk situation, and kind of have, three different business models that, um, imagine a future world, and show that our business is able to operate in any one of those situations. So that's kind of how we think about risks. Risks impact the profitability of our business, and therefore we want to consider them. That doesn't mean we need to, just because if something's high risk, or if something has risk, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to 180 our business to consider it. We may just proceed, moving forward, knowing that risk exists. So let's think about a example business here, and identify kind of, what are the revenues, costs, and kind of risks associated with it. So I made up a business here. It's called XYZ Fitness. Great name, I know. And our revenue streams are going to be monthly subscription fees. So it's a kind of a standard business. We've got personal training sessions. So if you want to hire a personal trainer, you can pay an additional fee. And then, we've got a store, so we can sell, apparel, supplements, knickknacks, those types of things in our gym store. Now, we've got costs. So because we're a physical space, I'm not an online space, we've got the rent for our space and our equipment. We've got fixed costs of salaries for, trainers and support staff. Maybe those are fixed costs, maybe they aren't. We could model them out. Maybe, it might be something like support staff, we pay monthly, and maybe personal trainers, get paid based on the amount of lessons they do or something like that. Or, we could have a model, and I'm just to flip this and throw maybe a wrench in this. We could have a model where, personal trainers pay us, and they just pay us to access the space, and they capture the revenue from those personal training sessions. So they're kind of using our space and bringing people in, kind of like how a hair salon works. That's a different type of business model, right? That requires a different type of marketing. Our customer is different there. Like, the customer in that relationship is the personal trainer versus the gym member. So when we're talking about being authentic and, really being transparent about what we're doing, that's what we're talking about. So those are two different business models. In this situation, I'm saying, basically the personal trainers are our staff, and so we're paying them direct. And we've got our utilities maintenance costs, and then we've got marketing and advertising expenses to get our name out there. So we've got our risks factors, competition in other areas that are competing with us, obviously. Economic downturns. So, as the economy gets better or worse, more or less people, maybe willing to spend disposable income on these types of services. And then last, we've got changes in regulations or policies that might impact our ability to operate. I think another thing that could go in here might be like seasonal risks. You'll often hear on New Year's resolutions that people keep their New Year's resolution for a year, and workout memberships are at an all high for the first 2 months or something like that of the year, and then drop off pretty rapidly. So when we start out, like if we're starting our business in, let's say, March, we may be trending down until we hit that holiday season or something like that. So we can think about that risk and kind of model that risk into maybe our cash flow model, something like that. Okay, so there's a lot of different types of revenue models. These are just a few of maybe kind of the base ones, but we'll go through these, and then maybe I'll a few more will come to mind. Obviously we've got just our standard pricing of here's my good, buy it from me, right? So a very simple transaction, a unit based kind of agreement. So it might be a unit based, meaning like buy one from me, or as you buy more the price goes down. So that's kind of a standard retail or bulk relationship. Got our subscription based relationship or membership based, same kind of thing, where it's charging a recurring fee for access. I'm sure we're all well attuned to that with media services or gym memberships. Advertise based revenue, so that's like when I'm basically leveraging somebody else's distribution and paying to kind of put my product, whether it's put my sticker, or if we think about like in retail stores, you'll often pay slotting fees. Those are basically display ad type relationships where I'm paying somebody for the distribution that they've established, and I want to kind of leverage and utilize it. Licensing based revenue models is where somebody might pay me to use my intellectual property, my software, my patent, if I created a comic book character or something like that, that they have the rights to use it under certain conditions in exchange for some fee. That fee could be, a one-time fee. It could be time bound. It could be per unit. Could be any of those types of things. If we think about something like a franchise type business kind of falls in here, where you're kind of licensing not only the brand name, but maybe some other types of things. So maybe a franchise type agreement might be like a licensing plus type business model. Yeah. So I bring this up because we want to think about how we're charging our customer, what's the way we're charging our customer, and then like does that fit with the customer's expectations, how they want to pay, how they're willing to pay? Does it fit with how our business operates? And yeah, so hopefully that kind of makes sense. We want to think about how are we, you know, uh, how are we constructing our business and our revenue model such that it's well aligned with how our business operates. So like I was saying before, we want to make sure everything is aligned. So we want to make sure that, we're being super authentic and upfront. We want to make sure that the business model that we're producing is aligned with, what our goals and our customers' needs are. So if we're misaligned, um, it's going to become really difficult to kind of break through, um, kind of like the noise, or get in front of our customer and um, and make sure that we're not giving them a service that that they don't want. So what I mean by that is, in our business XYZ Fitness, let's say what we've identified is actually, well, let's say we're being super authentic here. And we've identified that, like, look, the customers in our area that we're trying to serve, like, all they want, the only thing they only want a workout service for 2 months of the first 2 months of the year. That's all they want. That's all that's all they're willing to pay for. Now, so if we were doing that, we may design a business that's just like, look, here's the 2-month pack. Here's the, buy 2 months. It's going to cost you X amount of dollars. You buy it up front. Here you go. Maybe, that may be a good product to sell to, those people. That the customer may want that. They may buy that. Um, you know, it may be a good product. Now, the thing we need to analyze there, and the reason, why we think about this is not only a revenue model, but a profitability model, is if that's all we're going to sell, while the customer may want it and it may be good for them, it might not be good for us, meaning it might not allow our business to exist. And really, that's not good for anybody, because ultimately the customer wants us to exist, because if we don't exist, they can't buy that thing that they want. So that doesn't mean that we run away from that idea and that we trash it and that we move away. But, maybe what we need to do is, maybe they need to pay for that over the course of a year. And that's how we get to our, our monthly pricing or something like that. I know I'm kind of, I'm in Never Never Land here talking about different types of business models, but we want to make sure that we identify who our customer is, we identify their needs, that we provide them with a product that fills those needs, wants, and desires, but that we also consider the profitability of our business and ensure that the profits that are coming from the product and business that we and the product and business that we've designed for that customer still works for us as a company. And we need to do those two things simultaneously. We got to be thinking about the customer and we got to be thinking about ourselves. And we kind of need to meet in the middle and compromise. And we need to say, hey, I'm going to try to give this person as much as I can. And hey, I'm going to try to get as much as I can. But the reality is, there's going to be someplace in the middle. And if we're both not totally 100% happy, maybe that's okay. I can tell you that if given the opportunity, a customer would take everything they could for free. That's what they truly want. The minute you charge them anything, you're not giving them exactly what they want. So we're already starting at a compromise. So just keep going further and, keep thinking about how do we get these things closer and closer and closer to where what I'm offering, kind of locks together and works for them and works for me um, and allows us to stay profitable while staying competitive. And that's truly the goal. Give me 1 second here. I'm just gonna search for something to pull up in a minute. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so let's talk about unit economics and kind of our profitability analysis. So what are unit economics? Unit economics, we're referring to one unit, one single unit. Now, if we're selling apples, one single unit is selling an apple. Now, you may say, well, no, I'm not going to sell apples. I'm going to sell a bushel of apples. In that case, a bushel of apples is your unit. So the unit economics is the unit of what I'm selling, not necessarily, that single whatever that single apple. It might be the bushel of apples. Now, for a gym membership, it might be a month, it might be a year, it might be an hour, but the unit is kind of the base unit of what we're selling. And basically what we want to do is we want to understand the profitability of that single unit. All right, so we're going to look at a single unit and understand, okay, how does all this stuff break down on a per unit basis? So what that means is from like a cost structure, we're going to analyze, we're going to, like, if we have a fixed cost, we're going to spread that fixed cost over all the units we're going to sell and analyze the profitability of a single unit, based on the unit economics. So we always want to analyze our business based on unit economics, as well as kind of, overall kind of how does this thing work? So we want to be thinking about, how many X, Y's, and Z's do I need to sell in order to kind of make the macro business look the way I want it to. But on the micro level, on the unit analysis, we want to understand the profitability of each unit as well. Okay, so we want to understand the unit economics, which is the economics behind one unit of our product, whether that's a physical unit or a made up unit, like, per month or something like that. Now we've got similar key metrics. So we've got our revenue per unit, we've got our costs per unit, and then we've got our gross profit per unit, which is just our revenue minus our costs. So basically that's, quote unquote, how much profit we make after kind of the costs of the product have been burned. All right. So we'll take a look at a spreadsheet on this in a second and kind of run through an analysis, but that's what we want to look at. So revenue minus costs on a per unit basis is going to give us our gross profit. From there, basically we can multiply that by, how many units we sell, and that'll give us the gross profit that we're going to produce in total. So again, once we've calculated those units, the gross profit's going to tell us the profitability of each transaction that we create. And we want to analyze these trends over time if we're operating, to see how things move. If we're able to drive costs down, and we can see that on a per unit basis, that can really help us improve our business. And then we can analyze those things over time to say, hey, as we ran a marketing campaign, did revenue per unit go up? Did cost per unit go down? And kind of look at those items on a per unit basis. So we look at things on a per unit basis because it makes things simpler to analyze. It makes our business a little bit simpler to understand, but it also allows us to leverage it and kind of look at the macro analysis simply by multiplying by how many units we sell. So again, we've got our example of XYZ Fitness here, and we've got our revenue per unit. So we're selling, again, gym memberships is $100 per unit. Our costs is we've calculated, once we did all the cost analysis, $50 per month to cover, rent, maintenance, and staffing. And we then get a gross profit of $50 because 100 minus 50 is $50. Now, the one thing I'll say is so our revenue per unit, our revenue per month number is something we set, right? So we're going to charge $100. The costs, as you can imagine, when I do a rental agreement with, my landlord and my equipment, those companies aren't going to give me a cost that says, hey, we'll charge you $50 per member that you're able to get, right? They're going to charge me some kind of base rate. They're going to charge me $2,000 a month. And then basically I'm going to have to say, okay, I need to get 25 customers or whatever minimum in order to pay that $50 per month. So again, I'm going to pull up a spreadsheet here in a second. We'll try to go through a little bit of this and maybe how do we analyze these things and see if we can simplify this a little bit. So just remember, at the end of the day, where we're trying to drive is, again, making sure this should be opposite, that customer acquisition cost is less than lifetime value. So the lifetime value that we achieve, the profitability needs to be less than our customer acquisition cost. So what we're talking about calculating right now is really trying to determine one of the metrics behind determining our lifetime value. So in this case, if we're able to determine kind of the gross profit, we then multiply it by the average number of months we think we would keep a customer for, and that would give us our lifetime value. So when we do this unit analysis, it gives us some important data that can help us improve our profitability over time. So there's basically a couple ways we can improve profitability: raising revenue, lowering costs. The more kind of discrete data we have, the easier this becomes. So if we're able to track unit economics, if we launch an advertising campaign and we're able to analyze data that says, hey, this advertising campaign caused this specific unit to sell more, or people paid more for it, or something like that, we can say, hey, we should run more of that type of advertising because that directly, allowed us to increase our profitability. So we use we want to analyze our business on a unit basis because it makes things a little bit easier to analyze. It makes it easier to connect to specific advertising campaigns or specific initiatives that we may have to lower costs. And what we want to do is those things that impact our profitability, we want to do more of. And those things that impact our profitability positively, we want to do more of. And those things that impact it negatively, we do less. And over time, that's how we improve our business. So just as a reminder, I bring that up because we want to remember that we're really running experiments. So when we do like an advertising campaign, we're making an experiment. We're coming up with a hypothesis that, hey, I think if I do this, it'll have this result. We're creating an experiment, i.e. our actual advertising campaign. We're putting it out in the world. We're seeing what happens. And then once it happens, we take a look at the results and say, hey, did the result that I expected to occur or not? And if it did, we do more of it. And if it didn't, we don't. And that's how we improve over time. We don't want to take huge bets. We don't want to bet the farm. We want to take small structured steps incrementally building on top of each other. All right. So again, this is from the ebook on my website. So let's take a look real quick at how do we build a business model? What does that kind of look like? So I've got an empty Google sheet here. And let's talk about how we're going to build this. So we know we're going to have our revenue, right? And we're going to have our costs. And then I brought up risk factors. For right now, we're going to negate those. Okay. And what we're going to have is we're going to have cash on hand. So that's cash on hand is like what we start with. So that's like cash in the bank. And then I'll do one more. So we'll put our unit economics here, and then we'll do something like month 0, month 1, month 2, month 3. Okay, so what I'm showing is I've got my unit economics, and then we're going to build a model that moves to the right that shows how cash, adjusts over time. And so let's just say I've got $10,000. Well, so in month 0, I'm going to have $10,000 in the bank. Let's say, again, everybody's different on whether or not that's a reasonable number or not, but I'll just put it for now. And let's build out a unit. Let's build out a revenue model. So if we think back onto our example here of XYZ Fitness, we've got our revenue is $100 per month, and our costs were $50 per month. But there's some sort of like assumed amount of sales, right? So we've got to have like number of customers. So we need to have a scaling variable on how we think about scaling these things. So I'm just going to actually make this, instead of, we know it's per month, so we'll just make it 100, and this is going to be 50. All right, and then we've got our gross profit. Okay, and that's going to be equal to this minus this. All right, and again, these costs are based on some sort of number of customers that we're going to assume. Now that's gross profit. What I didn't talk about was net profit. So net profit, and what net profit actually is we're going to have some below the line costs, basically. So these costs, we're going to have some costs that we can assume are kind of fixed. So we, maybe we throw our rent in here, but we're going to have some costs that are not included in our unit economics. So that's generally called SG&A. And we're going to say that we've got $1,000 of costs that we just are going to have to pay regardless of what happens, that are not included in our unit economics. All right. So that's actually, it's not really in my unit economics. I'm actually going to put it over here. Whoop. So $1,000. All right, and we'll just track this. We'll just say this goes all the way across. And now our number of customers, we're going to have 0 in month 1. I want to change this data type. So it's just a number. So we're going to have 0 in month 1. We're going to have, let's say, 5 in month 2, 10 in month 3, or 10, I'm sorry, 5 in month 1, 10 in month 2, 20 in month 3. So whatever, something scales like that. So, well, what we're going to do here then is we can set an equation we're going to multiply our revenue times our number of customers, and we can scale revenue. And then we can basically do the same thing with our costs, like that. And then we can do the same thing there. And this is actually, it's a cost, so I'm going to make this negative. Make these negative because they're actually, we're looking at this on a cash analysis, so we're going to be losing money. So let me actually, I'll make all my costs negative, and we'll change this to a plus. All right, so what this is saying is in month 0, I have $10,000 on hand to start the month. I have 0, I'm going to get 0 customers. So my revenue is 0. My kind of unit costs are 0, which means I have zero gross profit. I'm paying $1,000 out of pocket for some sort of fixed cost, right? Which means that my net profit is going to be my gross profit plus that below the line cost. So I'm losing $1,000. So what that means is then at month 1, I'm gonna have $9,000 in the bank. So what I can do is when I drag these formulas over, what you can see is basically I need to get 20 customers such that my business is at break even based on these unit economics and that kind of amount of overhead in my business. All right. So then I can, do some things like playing. So that would mean, after month 3, so if month 4, let's say month 4, I had 30 customers. What we're going to see is we actually made $500, right? So we made $500. So in the next month, I'm going to actually increase my cash on hand. So, that's basically what this is telling me. So based on these unit economics and this amount of overhead, this is how the model, scales. So then what I need to do is I need to figure out how to get these amount of customers. I need to figure out how to get those amount of customers in order to make this model work. So that's how we're analyzing on a unit basis. That's how we're putting together a very simple business model. And it's how you kind of create a tool that you can tweak to understand, all right, what do I actually need to do to make this thing work? All right, so like I said, this is going to be utilized in the last lecture. You're going to have to do something like this. You need to put together this type of math. So start thinking about it. This isn't what you're turning in this lecture. I will get to that now. But that's how we put together a very simple business model to produce something that we can follow and operate our business by. So let's talk about the slide that we're going to put together today and why we're going to put it together. So the slide we're going to put together today is a prototype slide, but it's basically, to me, it's kind of a bit of a market validation slide. So The prototype, depending on where you're at in your business. So if you're just starting out in your business, um, the prototype is, if you don't have anything in market, the prototype is what is the first thing you're going to put together to even test, if the market exists. So it might be a very simple website. It may be, in this case, the prototype is just a diagram indicating what the curriculum is, where we're going to do it, and what are the specific activities involved. So it's just kind of a roadmap of, what is this thing going to look like? What are we going to put out into the market to test and try our idea? If you have an established business, your prototype may not be, you don't necessarily need to prototype the base business. It might be like a new marketing campaign, or when we're putting together this deck, what is kind of the next step? What are we going to test? What are we going to try? How are we going to grow our business? And then how do we kind of prototype that out? And the reason we want to talk about a prototype is we're trying to really de-risk our business. We're trying to take risk off the table. We're trying to um, test the market. Again, we're doing these small incremental steps, and we're trying to put something together that allows us to test our hypothesis in as low a risk a way as possible. So a lot of the times we'll call this a MVP, or a minimum viable product. And the key word there is really minimum. We really want to think about how do we strip as much out of what we're trying to present to the market as possible, but still give us a true test of, hey, does this thing have a chance to work or not? So for this week, what I want you to think about is really, okay, what are you going to the market with? And how do you test whether there is a market for what you are selling in as low a risk a way as possible? Meaning, how do you strip as much out of that product or service to see if there is actually a customer base? So if we go back to our XYZ fitness example, um, you know, you could consider, you could be like, well, minimum viable product is, I'm gonna go rent a space. I'm gonna go rent a space and I'm gonna actually try to conduct classes and, launch a website. And, you may arrive at, man, you got to put together a lot of things. You got to get a rental agreement. You got to get a website launched. You're going to take on all this cost to test, hey, does this area even need what you're offering? Is there really a customer base? An easier way to test and trial that maybe be, maybe like, hey, I'm gonna try to do my yoga class in a park where space is free. And can I simply am I able to drive people there where I don't have to pay for cost? I don't have to take on a rental agreement. Really the hardest thing I need to do is attract and see if people, are willing to, get outside and take my class. So is there a way of stripping different things out of your business so that you can test it in a much lower effort, much simpler way? Now, maybe you've graduated from that level and you're kind of thinking about your next level. In that case, what your prototype is going to be is go, okay, well, what's level 2 then? Where are we going to go next? And again, our business keeps ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. So this never really stops. So what I don't want to hear from people is, hi, my business is already established. I don't need to prototype. Well, where's your business going? What are you trying to do? Um, how are you trying to grow your business? Um, are you trying to take on, if you're an auto mechanic and you're trying to take on a new line of service, how do you prototype whether or not you're able to take on that new line of service? So that's what we want to put into our prototype slide. We want to, give a very simple indication of what is the experiment we're going to try to run. How do we organize that experiment? Some sort of pictorial representation of what that experiment's going to be. And then what are our success metrics? How do we measure whether or not that experiment was successful? So that prototype could be a marketing campaign. It could be the first iteration of getting customers. Kind of whatever you, wherever you are in your stage of business, think about, okay, what is something simple that I can put together that I'm going to test out in the market? And then how am I going to measure whether or not that test worked? Okay. That's what I want you to work on this week. And again, the prototype is really, it's to give us a sense of where does the business sit? Where's the business going, and what are you? Where is your business in the realm of when it comes to progress? How far along are you, and what does your progress allow you to test? Okay, so even if your business is non-existent, think about what's the first thing you would test? How would you see if there is a market? What would you do? What would you put out there? How would you do it? It might be something like just an ad campaign, and that's okay. But put something down on what is the prototype that we're going to test in the marketplace. Okay. So, yeah, I think that's it for this week. If you have any questions, please reach out. I'm available. I know that I didn't cover this in a ton, but really this is kind of an experiment for you to see where your business is at and what you think you can experiment with in the marketplace. All right. So have fun, and I will speak to you next week. Thanks.